Welcome to the ShrimpBackPodcast. We are your hosts. I am Sergio Villa, also known as O Abnormal.
I am Sabrina, just Sabrina.
And I am Mao, or Mao Draws.
And you can find us at O Abnormal all over the internet.
Sabrina Brady Art, all over the internet.
And Mao Draws all over the internet.
All over the internet. And today's podcast topic is how we got our jobs, part 1. So, today's topic is how we, three professional artists, but not the three most famous professional artists in the world, not the three biggest professional artists in the world, but just three professional artists that make a living off of their art, how we got our jobs, how we got started, and how we got to where we are now. And so the way we're going to start this is that we're going to talk about studying. We're going to start with what we wanted to study compared to what we ended up studying and how that all went. So, Sabrina, why don't you start by telling us what you originally wanted to study?
Yeah, well, okay, I'm going to kind of preface this a teeny tiny little bit because ultimately college, yes, is where a lot of things begin, but kind of where I got my start in art to actually lead me down that path a bit was I won the Doodle for Google 2013 competition. And because of that, I don't think that was all that crazy. It was fun, but
sorry. Would you mind explaining what that is? I mean, everybody knows what Google is, but would you mind explaining what the Doodle for Google competition is?
So it is a competition Google hosts every year, I think. That is a college scholarship program where you submit to their theme. They have a theme, and it's supposed to be the Google logo. So, you know, when you search into Google and they've got the little picture, they give you the theme, and you have to design it around Google. So it has to say Google somewhere in your design. The theme is then on that category. Ours was the my best day ever, and I drew my dad coming home from being in the war in Iraq. But to preface that too, I did it strictly because I needed a scholarship. And I remember my mom and I sitting down at the scholarship, like, what would tug at the heartstrings? What would get a lot of, like, interest, right? And I was like, oh, we'll make it about my dad in the military. That wasn't my best day ever. That was just me being like, what would grab?
Yeah.
And did not expect to win the whole dang thing.
That is like catnip for Americans, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, that's exactly what I wrote the entire time. And they flew me out to New York when I won just my state. So I won the state of Wisconsin. And they flew me out to New York. I was done there. I was like, that was cool. That was great. And then at New York, they announced the winner. And I was like digging under my seat because I was just convinced I did not win. I was just like, this is a great experience. I'm done. I'm like looking for a bottle, and they're like, Sabrina. And I went, like, what? Because I had no idea what was going on. And anyway, embarrassing story aside, I looked ridiculous. But yes, so I won that. That gave me the scholarship to go to college. Like, before that, I could not have done art school. I couldn't afford it. So with that scholarship, that's what launched me. That's why I kind of have to bring that up, because it was not in my plan to go to art school. I was going to go to regular college that was an hour outside of my hometown and go into, like, math. Like, I wanted to be a math teacher because I was convinced art wasn't going to do anything for me. But then after the Doodle for Google thing, I was like, I can afford it. Okay, I'm going to go for it. And my mom's like, you do you. Have fun. And she let me. So then I went to the Minneapolis College of Art and Design in the Twin Cities here in the United States. And I went in for just drawing because, like I said, I didn't have a plan. I was just like, I'm going to art school. Cool. And so I picked the most boring, flat major that there could have been that just encompassed everything. And I was like, drawing. Great. That sounds good. But as time went on, I decided that animation fit me a little more because I loved Disney movies. Who doesn't? And I said, I want to be a Disney animator. Everybody, I think, kind of wants to be at some point, like a little twinge of like, what would it be like to work on a Disney?
Yeah.
But it was in that weird transition of time where 2D animation was on its way out and 3D was coming in. I loved the 2D side, so I did 2D animation, and that was my downfall because nobody hires 2D animators anymore. That's my long-winded college story.
Okay, we'll get back there. So what about you, Mal? What
Okay, so
did you
yeah, I always wanted to do something with illustration or drawing. I didn't know like illustration was a career, but I had always loved drawing. I was like the artsy person in all my schools that I went to. Just so you know, I don't think I mentioned this the last time, but I went to 11 different high schools, and because of my parents' job, we had to move around. And
I was a troubled child.
yeah, that's where the trauma comes in. That's why I'm the way that I am. But yeah, I was always like, you know how in class you get like that's the guy that draws. That was me. So
I think we all were, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically.
They draw. Yep.
Yeah. So in high school, when they ask you the question of what do you want to be, I didn't know what to choose because I did know I wanted to draw, but I didn't know there was a career like animation or anything. So I asked the teacher that was in charge of like the class group, like, hey, I like drawing. What kind of career can I find here in Colombia to draw as a professional? And she said, graphic design. That's what you want to do. And I think O relates, and many people here relate because we don't have like, back then especially, we didn't have like video game companies or like animation companies. There were like a couple, but it wasn't like a career that you could study. We had like the closest thing, like either like arts. What's it called? Like the arts career. Fine arts.
Yeah.
Fine arts.
Just the classic degree in fine art. Yeah.
Yeah, and graphic design. Those were my only two options back then in 2009. Yeah, sorry. I wanted to say like 2010, but then it was like, no.
In the year 29.
Yeah. So yeah, that's basically what I decided with this teacher. That she was very kind. She explained like, you're not going to draw all the time. She explained graphic design a little bit. And then the only school that I applied to was UPB, which is, there's like a lot of UPB faculties all around the Colombia, I guess. But the one that was closest to me, were in the city that I was living in, was the one in Medellin. And I only applied to two schools. This one and another one. And the other one was the Colegiatura, which is another school here that also has graphic design. But then they showed me the prices, and that one was like, I think, double of what I had to pay. So I chose UPB, and that's where I studied graphic design. That's basically how I got into illustration. So yeah. Tell us about your story.
Oh, okay. For clarification, I live in the same city as Mal. So, just the same, I was the kid in school that could draw. I wanted to do comics. I wanted to do animation. I wanted to do illustration. I just wanted to do anything that involved drawing. And I had this dream that I wanted to go to the School of Visual Arts in New York. So I managed to like mail them, and I got the brochure, and I filled out the application form and all that kind of stuff, and I got a response and everything, and so I'll never forget, I showed up to my parents like, check it out, and the response was basically like, no, like, no, you're not, like, we can't afford like that. And I mean, of course, you have to understand that we're talking Colombian peso versus American dollar, and studying in the U.S. is
it's
insanely expensive.
Yeah.
It's especially those private art schools.
Yeah.
Plus, if you're not from the state, it's more expensive.
Mhm.
And if you're not from the country, it's more expensive. My parents basically told me, like, no, no, you're not going to study there. You can choose, like, you have to choose something here. So, it defeated. I just kind of went like, okay, so what is the most like what I want to study? And that's how I ended up in graphic design. Which, by the way, spoiler, no.
Yeah, no. Not at all.
No, it has nothing to do. And I think that would lead us into oh, by the way, my parents, my dad wanted me to study advertising because in his mind, that built on like, oh, he can draw,
Yeah.
he should study advertising.
That's the professional art world.
Yeah.
And my mother wanted me to be an architect or a veterinarian. She always dreamt of having a veterinarian kid, but
Completely different path.
Yeah.
she thought, but my mother was like, oh, he can draw, he should be an architect. And well, okay, I guess that leads us into another question, which is, okay, before we get into the whole how you started working, what kind of role do you think your studies have played in you being able to be a professional artist? Do you think?
Oh, man. Yeah, at first, I would say not at all. That was one thing that was a big slap in the face post-graduation, was they played, especially at the school I went to, they made you feel like there were ample job opportunities, that you will get a job because you got the degree you got it in. Like,
Yeah.
that was very quickly not the case. Very quickly. I mean, to a T, the week I graduated, I think I applied to like 20 different places. Like, I'm going to do it. I've got my degree. Let's go. I put my portfolio out there of all of the stuff that was in just schoolwork, right? No professional up to that point, except some like internships. No, crash and burn, hardcore. It didn't help me whatsoever. Now that I'm a little more into it, I would say I use animation. Like, it's not the core bit of my work, but my degree did come in handy eventually. Just not in the way that my little fresh graduation thought it would. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
What about you, Mo?
Okay, so I kind of have like a dilemma with this, because it has been useful in the sense of like, yeah, graphic design is useful for illustration. I can apply it to my actual current job. But back then, when I was studying graphic design, I couldn't get any jobs as a graphic designer because I sucked at being a graphic designer. I was more of an illustrator. So that's why I told you guys, I think in the last episode, that I couldn't find any jobs for my internship. So I had to make up my own company to work as an illustrator, mostly because I was very stubborn, and let's say the companies that I could have applied to as a designer, I just said no to because I didn't want to do the work as a graphic designer. But the diploma as like, yeah, I'm going to get a job as a graphic designer. It hasn't applied to me. I haven't used it. It's like, it's there. I think the only time they asked for it was when I was applying to be a teacher at the university O works at. And that was the only time that they were like, hey, did you graduate? Okay. And that was the only time that I kind of needed it. But no.
Yeah. I feel like at a point it just becomes like, okay, you made it through college, so you're at least somewhat like smart. You got, you passed your coursework, so it shows you're responsible. Like that's what we got out of our degrees more than the actual implications of what your degree was.
Yeah, I guess. Or I don't know what O thinks about it.
Well, the thing is, I was really good at graphic design.
Toot your own horn over there.
Hey, I'm sorry. I don't care. It's like, look, it is what it is. I'm really good at it.
We're not good at it, and you're like, yeah.
No, I'm sorry. It is what it is. Like the results are there. I was really good at graphic design. Later, I'll tell the story of how I abandoned art for graphic design for a while. And so, as soon as I got out of the university, like classes ended on a Friday, and Monday I already had a job interview, and I got that job.
What?
And,
so different. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Wait, was it full-time work, like a freelancing type thing, or was it?
It was full-time work. It was full-time work.
Wow.
As a graphic
Congratulations.
Yeah.
did that but here's the thing. As an artist, because I mean we're talking, I'm the oldest of us three, so we're talking 20 years ago. And when I eventually made the decision to not be a graphic designer, but be an artist 20 years ago, if you told me I have to show you my diploma, I'd need a day or so to find it. Like, I hope it's there, because I suppose it would be kind of wasteful to like lose that. But I would need some time to find my diploma. Most of the people I work with have no idea what I studied. And most of the artists that I've met studied something else. So I would say that in this particular line of work, of illustration, first of all, graphic design it's been useful in that I know some graphic design things that put me at an advantage. I know how to handle type and font better than most, and I can actually lay out a page, and stuff like that. And it's been useful in certain things that I know as a graphic designer, but these things are not secret, and they're not like worth, a 5-year,
commitment.
That's a topic for another day. But YouTube, and what you can find online now is an entire college degree.
So my graphic design degree in my job as an artist has absolutely no relevance. It occasionally is useful, but from my point of view, as in, I know this, and that's it. That is it. I could have studied law. For all my clients, no, I could be a lawyer.
But while studying graphic design, did you ever think like, I might get into working as a graphic designer other than illustrating, or were you like?
Oh, okay. So here's what happened. When I started graphic design, which I started in 1998, I was like the guy that could draw, the guy that was like just great at graphic design. I was like star student until I got to the middle of the 5 years that the whole thing lasts, back then, because it lasts 4 years now. And around the middle of graphic design at UPB, because I went to the same place Mao went, was actually Mao's teacher when he studied, but that's another story. Anyway, when I got to the middle of it, back then there was this thing where after 5th semester, you got to decide what the next semester was going to be about, like what the focus of that semester was going to be, and that was called modules, right? There was a module in editorial design. There was a module on font design. There was a module on video. There was a module on corporate design and stuff like that. And obviously, I wanted to immediately take the module in illustration. So I did. I almost, like, that was the semester that I almost lost the semester. Like, I almost flunked the semester.
Why? Like, what? Just, was it a different challenge, or was it you focused so much on illustration you said screw all to the rest of it?
Well, okay. It's okay. Here I am, 22 something years later, and with 18 years of experience teaching. And it's a lesson I learned at that moment, and I still think the lesson applies. And it's, you can disagree with your teacher on a lot of things and still benefit from the class. You can have opposing personalities, you can have different methods, you can have a lot of disagreements and still benefit from that class. But if you disagree with your teacher on the fundamental aspect of what it is to be a good illustrator, like if you both disagree on what being an illustrator is, you got a problem. And I, as an artist, I'm very, very, I've always been very technically focused. I, there's a lot more to art than just drawing well. To me, it's always been very important that, that is a part of it. It's not all of it, but it is a part of it. You gotta know your fundamentals. You gotta know your anatomy. You gotta know all these things. Back then, when I was like 19 years old, I didn't really kind of have that notion of what the fundamentals are and all that kind of stuff. But I did have this idea that gotta draw good. You gotta draw good and stuff like that. And the teachers really were not that kind of illustrators. They were more a kind of artsy, experimental.
Tell us a story.
Yeah.
Where did this hit you in your feelings? Oh, what are you trying to express?
But no, like not even that. They
oh God, that was all my art school was. Ugh.
On the experimental part of it, they were like, why don't you try like maybe like an alternative technique? Like, look at this illustrator. He illustrates with beans. Like,
actually, there was a video I saw online a long time ago that was a parody of art school, and it was like, oh, what did you paint this in? Blood. It's just like, do you remember that guy?
One of my teachers, he would paint in class, and he would use watercolors, and he wouldn't use water.
Yeah.
You know what he used?
Pee? Sweat?
Spit. No.
Oh man. I was like, we're going.
I mean, spit is pretty bad, but pee would be okay. No, he would just take the brush and put it to his mouth and just go like.
Oh no! Oh man!
Then he would paint with that, and I'm like, okay. The way like,
stinky
to me, the
picture.
story that dry spit smells awful.
Yeah.
Kind of the way what made me go like, oh, I see we're never gonna get along. There was one class that the teacher showed up with presentation about an illustrator that she considered to be the ideal illustrator, and she wanted to present us this so that we could kind of learn what is the ideal of an illustrator. The whole story was that it was this woman from the U.S., an artist, and she fell in love with some dude, and the dude moved to Peru.
Okay.
Without her, mind you. Without her.
Seems very one-sided
Because at
love
the-
here.
Because at that point, like, my cynical bald head is going like, get the message, lady.
Yeah.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Message. But no. So after he moved to Peru, she decided that she was gonna move to Colombia because she saw on the map that Colombia and Peru were kind of like sort of close. So her plan was to move to Colombia so that on the weekends she could just take a train ride to Peru and visit her boyfriend.
Why not move to Peru? Anyway, I
That was not
Digress.
even mentioned in this story. Yeah, that wasn't even mentioned in the story.
Yeah.
So, okay, for those of you listening that are not familiar with the layout of Latin America, first of all,
look at a map.
we are look at a map and you'll see mountains
Yeah.
all through it called the Andes.
Yeah.
Like you can't.
You can't just go
Going
over
from-
those like a hop, skip, and a jump.
Well, you can literally go in a vehicle from Colombia to Peru, but I don't even know how long that would take. I'm pretty sure
Days.
it's not like
Yeah.
no, like not just days. It's and second, there are no trains
Yeah.
from Colombia to Peru. Like there's not even trains from one city to another within Colombia.
Yeah.
That's not even a thing. And so I'm just thinking, like, don't just relocate to another country. By the way, we're talking about the 90s. So you don't just relocate to a country that is considered to be one of the most dangerous countries in the world. Like back in the 90s.
Yeah.
You don't just relocate to Colombia in the 90s without doing a little bit of research first to at least know that your plan of visiting your boyfriend during the weekends on a train from Colombia to Peru is just not going to happen. I'm thinking all this, and the teacher goes, "See, that's the ideal illustrator." I'm sitting there, what? And she goes, "Innocence." Innocence?
Innocence.
Oh, you mean stupid?
Yeah,
Oh,
basically.
you mean stupid. So at that point, I kind of realized, oh yeah, we are fundamentally on different pages about what being an artist and an illustrator is. So throughout the entire semester, no matter how much effort I would put to what I did, I would always flunk. We're talking grades like 0.2 and stuff like that. It was just awful. And
Which, by the
at
way,
one
is
point in the
very-
semester-
Sorry to interrupt it. It's very difficult
Oh.
in graphic design to get such low
Yeah,
notes.
Ab-
It's like
absolutely.
on purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. Like. So what happens at a certain point of the semester is that we have this one assignment. We have to make some illustrations, and at this point in the semester, I kind of gave up. Just like, no, I'm not even trying anymore. Nothing I do works. No matter how much effort I put into it, I always get like the worst grades. I'm done. So I'm at my house. I lived with my parents back then, and I remember this very well. I'm watching the Born Identity
Okay.
on cable.
Yeah.
Right? I'm watching the Born Identity on cable, and I'm just there. It's like 9 p.m. Like, how to do my homework? Okay. So I take out a sheet of paper. It was 3 images. So I take out 3 sheets of paper. I'm like, oh my god, what am I gonna do? And the movie. I'm sorry if anybody's a big fan of the Born series. I thought it was boring as.
I have not seen it.
Yeah,
Me neither.
okay, I'm bored. I'm bored. I'm just watching this, and I'm like, okay, what do I have here? Oh, here's some paints, and no exaggeration, like in 5 or 10 minutes, I just squirted paint on these things, like just like no more than 5 or 10 minutes, and just
Good.
like
Turn it
squirted
in.
stuff there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good enough.
No, it gets better. So like, okay, I just continue watching The Born Identity. About 10 minutes later, I'm like, oh, okay, this should be dry. Oh, these are oil paints.
Oof.
Yeah, they don't try easy.
Am I gonna repeat? No. So I'm like, the oven. So I take my. Okay, I'm never saying I'm very smart. I was just okay, whatever. So
hey,
I
it sounds
take my
like a good
sheets
plan
of-
to me. Low enough,
Yeah.
you're good.
I take my sheets of paper, I put them in the oven, and I go and I sit down to watch the Born Identity a little bit more, pour it out of my mind. I'm just sitting there, and suddenly start smelling like something's burning. And so, oh my God, I run to the oven. The sheets are literally on fire. I pull them out, put them out. I look at them all crispy and kind of burnt. And right next to me is like vinyl paint. No, that's not what it's called. Vinilos in Spanish. It's just a water-based paint that dries really fast, and it's red. And what I literally did was I dipped my fingers in it, took them out, and then sprinkled on
Good
the
old
sheet of
splatter.
paper.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Looked at it, said, "I'm done." I turned that in the next day.
Yeah.
3 wrinkly, literally burnt pieces of paper with red paint sprinkled on them. And I got
Perfect
highest
score.
grade. Yeah, I got
Yep.
perfect score. I got perfect score.
That sounds like art school.
So,
Yeah.
so at that point, I'm like, oh wow, okay, I get it now. I get it
Yeah.
now. I was not able to win a single solitary other assignment moving forward that semester, but that perfect score that I got on that assignment
Carried
saved
you
my
through the
semester.
class. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you 3 is a passing grade, and I passed that semester with a 3.1 or 3.2. And at the end of the semester, the teachers and me, which by that point it was incredibly clear that we did not like each other. We had even told each other that we didn't like each other throughout the semester. And the day of the final, the semester's ending, the teacher actually comes up to me and she told me, hey, I think you're not very good at this, but you seem to think you are.
Cool.
So I think maybe you should try something else. Maybe you should see if your talents are elsewhere. And that was it. That was the end of the semester. The following, you can't repeat these things. So the following semesters, I took other classes: editorial, typography, video. And I'd like to say, I wish I could say, but that didn't discourage me. But it did. It did.
Yeah.
It did. And I stopped making art. And I graduated. And by the time I graduated, I was a graphic designer.
Mhm.
I was a graphic designer that could draw.
Yeah.
But I was a graphic designer. And when I graduated, I was like, I'm going to work as a graphic designer. So I got my first job, as I said, just the very next week. And I worked there for 3 months, and then I
What'd
got
you do?
called.
Like what
I
kind
was-
of work was it?
I was the graphic designer
Okay.
for a university, not the university where I studied, but another university that didn't have graphic design. So I was the graphic designer for the university. My job was to do their magazines,
Posters and
yeah, all those things. And I did
Gotcha.
that for 3 months, and I got scouted or recruited by a web
Ooh.
development company. Keep in mind that we're talking about the year 2003. So web development, web page companies were a
Tacky.
thing.
Yeah.
No.
I'm just- I'm thinking back to 2003 websites.
Well,
The
yes. Yeah,
competition
because also
wasn't very-
2003, Flash, which by the
Yeah.
way was not Adobe Flash, this was Macromedia Flash,
Mhm.
Oh wow. Yeah.
was a biggest thing, and I learned Flash. I remember they called me to go through an interview. I went to the interview and they told me we do our web pages here in Flash. Can you handle Flash? Certainly. I didn't. So I had a weekend to learn Flash, and I got hired there. as a graphic designer for web pages in Flash. And I worked there for 6 months. But what happened then, I think I've hogged the mic enough. So
don't worry.
let's
Oh no, you're
let's leave
good.
it. Oh, you sure? because
I am
because
just
what happened
soothed
then.
by that voice. You're fine. I
Yeah.
am just
Oh,
like,
okay.
oh yes, yes.
Yeah.
So I worked there. Worked there as a website designer in Flash for 6 months. And at first the job is awesome. I'm having fun. And around like a few months in, the head of the graphic design department quits, and I get promoted. I'm the new head of the graphic design department. And I'm just like, I'm like on
I've
top
peaked.
of the world.
I'm done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, how old were you back then?
I was 23.
Okay. Oh wow, yeah,
I
that's
was 23.
We have
yeah.
very different stories, though.
yeah.
So I'm the head of the graphic design department. I'm like on top of the world. And so this was in an office building downtown, where the elevator opens to the office. I know this sounds irrelevant, but believe me, it is. So the elevator opens to the office. And the owner of the company, basically two people have keys to the office. This is like you have to open from the elevator, stuff like that.
Mhm.
And so the systems engineering director or whatever, he has keys to the office, and the owner of the company has the keys to the office. So I'll never forget. This was August 3rd, 2003.
So specific.
I was cursed with good memory. So I show up to work at 8 a.m. and there were like this was a 15-person company. So I show up to work at 8 a.m. and all the people from the company are gathered downstairs in the lobby. So we're like, oh, what's going on? Why aren't we? Like, oh, Alex hasn't arrived. Alex is the systems engineer that normally
Has
is the
the
first
key.
guy to arrive.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm seeing where this is going.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. So I remember like the day before. Oh, Alex had a medical thing or something. Like he's not gonna get here until 10.
Yeah.
So well, hey, we have to call the owner. He has to open. We start calling the owner. I'm just gonna call him Canizales.
Okay.
Right? That's his last name. So I mean, yeah. we're
Okay.
gonna call
Yeah.
Canizales.
I was like, that's quite the name to just pick off the fly,
Yeah.
but okay.
Yeah. That's his name.
Yeah.
So we start calling him. He doesn't answer. We call Alex. Like, hey, Alex, you have the keys. We're all trapped out here, like right outside of the office. And he's like, no, I don't have the keys. Last night, Canizales, we were the last two to leave the office.
Mhm.
And he told me that he had forgotten his keys. So I gave him mine. Right? It's pretty normal, right? Like I mean, this isn't like a weird thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're trapped down there. Eventually, 10 a.m. rolls around. Alex shows up. We start talking to the security guard. He doesn't want to let us up. Eventually, we had to make up the story that, like, what if he's dead up there? What if-
To get the security guard to let you guys up.
Yeah, like-
Yeah.
So eventually, he lets us up. So we go up on the elevator, and the elevator door opens, and we're like, did we get the wrong floor? Because
Oh
it
no.
is
Empty.
like, empty. And I don't mean just like there's nobody there.
Yeah.
I mean
Cleared.
office.
Yeah.
Like the
Yeah.
office is not there. Like there's
Oh,
no desks,
no.
there's no computers. Like it is empty. We're like, did we like? Is this the wrong floor? What's going on? So we go downstairs. The security guard doesn't know anything because like it's not his shift, stuff like that. So fortunately, Canizales lives like 2 blocks away from there. So the 15 of us march over his building. And again, with the security guard, like he's not answering. Like,
Yeah.
what if he's dead? So finally we get allowed up. and the door to his apartment is open, and the apartment is empty.
Oh no.
Did he just
It's just
clear
Yeah.
out and leave? Just gone?
well, later on, like not that day, but later on, we discovered, like we found out by doing some research and all that he was a con artist, and his
Quite the con.
Yeah.
this was like the third reported time that he
Yes.
had done that. Who knows how many other times? What he would do is he would make companies, get investors, get all that kind of stuff, and as soon as there was a certain amount of money accumulated,
He
disappears.
dip out?
Yeah.
Wow.
And
That's
so
crazy.
Yeah.
so August 3rd, I'm going home after this very, very weird experience. And something hits me. About a month before that, at the office on my breaks, I had discovered internet commission artists.
How
I
did you
discovered
discover
that
this?
that was a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, just surfing, just
Okay.
surfing the web. We're talking 2003, so Facebook was not a thing. We're talking MySpace. MySpace
Oh,
was
wow.
the social media. So,
Mhm.
and I didn't even have a MySpace. YouTube was not a thing. Like social media was just not a thing. But just surfing the web and stuff like that. I had found a website of different artists that worked online as commission artists, and I had also discovered webcomics, specifically in the arcade.
Penny Arcade?
Yeah, that's the one that I like discovered. That was like my first webcomic.
Okay.
So as I'm riding home, thinking about the very weird day I had just had, it kind of hit me like I never wanted to be a graphic designer. Why am I a graphic designer?
Yeah, because meanwhile,
wanted-
are you drawing and active like on
Yeah.
for yourself, right? Like, were you
Yeah.
painting, or
I
not
kept on
painting,
drawing
but
as a hobby. Yeah, like
yeah,
as a hobby.
yeah.
And so as I'm going home, I'm thinking, I never wanted to be a graphic. Why am I a graphic designer? I didn't want this. I wanted to be an artist. And so I got home, and my mother, bless her heart, she's trying to be understanding, and she's like, "Oh, that's awful." Of
Yeah.
course, it's awful. So she sees that I'm like, that this is affecting me. So she tells me, why don't you take the rest of the month off? You never got a vacation when you finished studying. You like finished studying and went straight into. And I had worked like all throughout my studies. I had worked as
Okay.
well as study. She's like, hey, why don't you take a vacation? Take this month off, and in September, you start looking for jobs again. So understanding.
Yeah.
And I'm like, nope. I'm gonna be an internet artist. and my mother, looking back, she's like, oh, sure. Okay. So I tell her, I'm gonna take this month to work on my portfolio. I'm gonna make a portfolio. And what I'm gonna do in September is I'm gonna get a job as an artist through the internet. And she's like, oh, let's see how that goes. Let's see how that goes. And okay, and now we can go on to I just hogged the mic
No,
super.
don't worry.
And I hope. So, okay, now let's go into the topic of how did you get your first piece of work as an artist?
Well, now that I am just soothed to sleep over here, I'm not in a bad way. I got so cozy listening. I'm like,
Yeah.
wait, right? I have to talk. Okay.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No,
No,
you're
don't
good.
worry.
You're good. I'm sorry if you guys can hear my cat. Yeah, I think she sees the bug out the window.
Oh, no,
Anyway.
she's cute.
I got my first commission of sorts honestly right before I started college. And it was because of the Doodle for Google thing. We're bringing that right back up. But they saw that on Google and said, I want to piggyback off of this internet blip of, I don't want to say fame. It was a very, very brief moment where I was like, I thought I was hot shit. Excuse my language. And someone else saw that too and was like, I could probably piggyback off of this for a moment. And they wanted me to illustrate their children. Granted, I sucked.
A children's book.
A children's book.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was not good, but I said yes because I was like, this sounds great. I had drawn in art classes up to that point. She said she'd pay me, I'm going to be very transparent, $500 for the whole book. And I said, wow, that's great money because
Yeah.
I was just graduated high school. And so I would say that is my first paid commission. Do I like it? Does it still hang out on my portfolio? Oh gosh, no. But it existed. And that kind of nailed in more of the, I'm going to go to art school because I can do this. If someone already wants me to be working in art, I was feeling cool. I was feeling like I could do this and make a career of it. Then more specifically, once I was in college, we had to do 2 internships to be able to graduate. So the internships that I did, one was this company called Make LLC, or Make Visual was their extended name, and it was in the Twin Cities. And I got an in of that through a long line of people that just said, hey, Sabrina. And that's how I got in. I didn't apply. I didn't do anything. They needed help. Somebody said Sabrina could do this. And I slipped my little way in there. And that was internship with that. But I needed one more. There were no other studios. There was no other work. I'm like, how do people get to internships here? At the time, it didn't exist. So the school thought of that and said, you can take this internship class. It was a class that counted as your internship because they knew we couldn't get to internships. So, but what was fun about that class is you still worked with a client. So the school outsourced to find a client that was willing to work with in the course. And we actually were in contact with them, and it was very professional. We worked as a mini, and that was actually really fun.
Yeah.
And that was more of cementing it in that, I could do this. The client was really, they liked our work the best, or the team that I was a part of, they had really good things to say. So it just gave me all of confidence of, I'm going to graduate and do something with this. This is great. And it was around that time, a little bit after, that I actually met you two online. And so that was, I'm going to be completely honest, around the time I thought I was hot stuff. I thought that I was ruling the world in the art department. And then now, to get more serious about it, when I graduated, nothing. To this day, I can reflect back on it and probably say my portfolio was up to par, but also at the same time, I'm not moving to LA to actually go work at Disney. I'm in the middle of the Midwest of the United States. There's nothing there except that one studio that I worked for my internship. So I did not get any work for about 2 years. I worked at a local jersey company. I don't really know what to call it. I put the names and numbers on the backs of motorsport jerseys. That was my day job. And I grabbed that one because I thought, hey, I'm still working in graphic programs to put names and numbers in the jersey. And sprinkled throughout there, I called myself a freelance artist, but got scrapped for actual clients. I put on my resume that I had been free this whole time because technically I was open for freelancing, so I'm going to say I freelanced that year, even like 2 commissions, we'll call it, right?
Yeah.
But they were bigger commissions. So that actually like helped. It was the fact that I worked with the Mayo Clinic, which is the biggest hospital here in the United States. I worked with a lab for them to create their infographics. And that was about every 4 months I would make an image for them. I mean, we're still talking, while I worked with a big client, it was a sprinkle. It was nothing. And I got maybe like $200 for each image I did for them. So it's nothing to live off of. It was just fun stuff that I was like, yay, I'm a working artist, right? As much as I could like hold on to the idea, do this.
Yeah.
Then in my desperation for trying to really nail down my first job, for lack of a better word, as an artist, I found this game studio, in quotes, on Reddit that was looking for an artist, but it was the dreaded RevShare project, where, in other words, you do not get paid until the game comes out and makes money. Fell for it. It's one of those. I just wanted anything, and I convinced myself that I could build my portfolio off of it, right? Like, at the very least, if this fails, I've got more of a portfolio that just shows I worked on a project with other people.
Yeah.
Lo and behold, no, that did fail. So, did I get a portfolio piece out? Maybe like 1. So when I'm sitting here saying, like, what is my first paid commission? Heck if I know. Because was it $200 from Mayo Clinic? Was it the RevShare project? No. But, like, I was trying to work in the arts.
Yeah.
And I won't go any farther than that, because that kind of now goes of how did I actually... But it was a very rough first commission timeline of events there.
Wow.
Yeah, but I do
Yeah.
kind of see how
not to age you or anything like that, but that failed RevShare project. How long ago was that?
Well, okay, long ago, or how long did I work on it? Because that kind of plays into
How long?
Long
ago?
ago?
How long ago?
5 years? 5 years ago?
Okay.
Yes.
It was in the middle of what kind of stopped streaming. It was around that time. I don't know what year that was. Anyway, somewhere around there.
2018.
So yeah, about 4 years ago. Okay. My math was... See, you have a good memory, but I'm like, oh. Okay.
Okay,
So yeah, but I
guess
did
it's
that
Mao's
for a
turn.
year. An entire year I worked RevShare for that people. Full time. Like, I worked with my day job, but I did full-time free work for that studio.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess it's Mao's turn now.
Okay. Let me think.
Let loose, Mao.
Yeah, because I wanted to go back a little bit to the whole how did I started like actually considering being an illustrator, and it was in your class, because up until then with the whole graphic design thing, I was enjoying the career, let's say, and it was like, yeah, I can sometimes draw, and it was like I wasn't like the best. I was I did try my best, but it was like insane like compared to the other students or classmates that I had, I was like below average, let's say. I was able to draw better than most, but when I drew like the whole graphic design part really stood out as no, it still lacks something. So when I got into the first illustration class that I took, it was like O was mentioning. It was something like, yeah, you have to be artsy, and they told us like about this artist that painted with her period's blood or whatever. And I was like, oh man, this is weird. I'm not creative like that. I just want to draw. And like O said, we're very much alike in that thing that we're, I think with Sabrina as well, that we like.
Yeah, you want to make
technical
cool stuff, not
exactly the cool stuff.
feel it.
Yeah.
You wanna be creative.
Yeah.
You want to be resourceful, but you also want to be just skilled. Like
Yeah.
you don't,
Yeah, I want to make something that looks cool
Yeah.
and pretty,
Yeah.
or gives like that
Yeah.
like that wow factor, but not.
Yeah.
I don't
But,
want to
like-
paint because it's my like emotion for that day, and I have to
Exactly.
capture it.
Yeah.
Capture that
my
emotion.
soul is my brush,
Yeah.
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 and my
Yeah.
period is my paint.
Yeah.
Ugh.
And that was most of that first illustration class with which other teachers that they were great. They did teach me like the fundamentals, let's say, but it was like very hippie, very emotional, and I didn't quite like that. So here enters O into the picture, which I had heard rumors about. There's like an illustration class, but this one's advanced. And this one's for actual people that are skilled and talented. And you have to submit like a portfolio for it. And it was like, it started sounding like, this is what I want. I need to get inside of this class, which was like, I think at the time, they were making like, no, only 20 students will get into the class and the other ones have to try next semester and stuff like that. And I was like, this sounds like a club. I need to get into this club. So I started.
Which,
okay.
by the way, I'll clarify. That was all classes. Like all classes had a limit
Oh,
of
yeah.
20 students.
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
It wasn't
But-
just your.
no,
Yeah.
no, all those courses had a limit of 20 students.
Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
sure. But you had to had like the
Yeah,
portfolio
it
and the
had,
skills
like-
and the whatever. It was like, and for me,
Yeah.
I remember in my mind, I was like just blown away by the idea of being like, yeah, I need to become something to get into this, not like the other classes that you just apply to. And yeah, so I started working on my portfolio. I started doing more things. I started stalking. Oh, I don't know if you know this, but I kind of knew
Oh,
where.
I didn't know this. I'm
Yeah.
finding
So
out.
yeah. So the first time I actually saw you was at the presentation of the modules, which is like, okay, here's animation, here's
Yeah,
whatever.
what classes you can take.
Yeah, exactly. So the presentations were very interesting because most teachers were like, this is what we do, this is what you, and it was like very plain for me. I know other people would be like, oh yeah, it's like, this was great, and they were all the same. But no, for me it was like, this is typography, this is whatever. And I was like, I kind of like animation, but yeah. And then enters O. And he's like a rock star. I'm sorry if this is like embarrassing or whatever, but I don't care.
You are finding out
it's all
today
good.
just
Yeah.
how
It's all-
much
it's all
Mal loves
good.
you.
Yeah,
Just to know how red I get, and that's it.
yeah. But it felt like I saw like the images of the students, and I was like, they're making that like cool actual images that are like backgrounds and fantasy and characters, and I was like, why didn't I know this existed? Because before that it was like graphic design, like boring stuff, and I started looking like I can do that for an entire semester. So I went to O after the talk, and I wanted to say hi, introduce myself, and say like, hey, I want to be in your class. But he was talking to another student, and I kind of went like, and I went away, and I couldn't say hi. So that's how I met O, let's say, and then I took the class. But that's like my story of, okay, this is what I thought I wanted, which was graphic design, and then this is what really fascinated me and interested me, and I was like, I have to do this as a career because this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. And that's where I get like O's let's say help or guidance, because throughout the semester he started explaining like yeah, there's commissioned artists that work on the internet and sell like fantasy illustrations and like awesome, really cool jobs. And that like opened my mind up to, so I was like, I don't have to do graphic design. I hate graphic design. I didn't realize it, but I hate it now. It was like, whoop, yeah, no more graphic design for me. And I started getting like small commissions, let's say, from friends, and the usual like, can you draw my boyfriend, and all the
Mhm.
same commissions we all get asked to do. And then those were the first ones that I got paid for. But as an actual job, I told you guys in the last episode, I couldn't find any because the 3 companies that could use me as an illustrator wanted me to be an animator. And I did study animation in university for a semester, but I found out I wasn't an animator. I do like it. I do like animated films, but it's not for me. It's very different. And just thinking about that semester gives me like hives and stuff because it's like, it was very painful. Yeah. But going to the whole thing of, okay, now I'm like focused on, I want to be an illustrator, just like, I want to do this for like commissioned artists. And my stubbornness made me go into, okay, the only way I'm going to get an internship is if I make my own video game company with my brother and friends. So that's, let's say, the first actual job after graduation where I was like, I'm an artist, I'm getting paid for illustrations. And I worked there for about 3 years, I want to say, until the company just ended. But that's like, those were the first jobs that I was like, okay, I'm illustrating. I don't have to do logo design, or I did have to, but it was like weird because I was the only artist there in the company.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of how I got, which I know it doesn't sound like the conventional artists that you hear. I love Cinder right now, viewers. It's just
being a little needy. Will you please lay down? Lay down.
She wants Sabrina's attention.
Just lay down. Okay.
She's so cute.
God.
Yeah. So anyways, that's my story of how I actually got into the whole...
started working.
Yeah.
For lack of a better word. Yeah.
There's many other stories, but I want to kind of hear you guys, like, what happened next. But wait, I think we do need to take a short break here, because I don't want this file to crash, and it's starting to give me, like, signs here.
Jitters? Okay.
Yeah, so I'm going to pause.
Starting to get
And we're back. There you go.
Okay. We'll be back after these messages.
No, we already did that part. Now we're back.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. We're back after those messages.
This is episode 2. A new week.
No.
Okay, so the last time we discussed, I had told my mother that I was gonna basically make an online portfolio and look for a job, and she didn't seem very convinced. So she tried to convince me, like, no, just take the month off and you'll look for work in September. And I told her, no. Give me a month. And I'll find job on the internet as an artist. I just need this month to make a portfolio. And so I did. I took that month and I made a portfolio. Back then, I had $100. That's all I had. I had $100. And so I bought hosting for a website.
Yeah.
Yep.
And my very first website, I'm not kidding, was dragonskull.com.
Oh,
yeah.
beautiful. Yes.
I thought it was badass. Badass. I think, I'm not entirely sure if still, but I eventually lost that website, that domain. And I think if you look at it right now, it's like a Magician Supply website, I think. I'm not, that was a few years ago. I haven't checked it in a while, so I don't know what it is right now.
Yeah.
So, like, if you're going to
search at your own risk.
Yeah.
Yeah, search at your own risk. Because there's dragon stuff on the internet that's not quite what you think it would be. Anyway.
Wait, but I do have a question.
So yes.
What consisted your portfolio of? Because I'm curious what kind of images were your portfolio.
Okay, so my very first portfolio, which of course was in Flash.
Nice.
Obviously was in Flash. Consisted of, like, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 drawings. I didn't do digital at that time. I did mostly watercolors. So just like 8 or 7 images of like just what I thought would be in the kind of jobs I wanted to get, which was illustrating role-playing games. So I remember there was like an elf and like a battle scene, a pair of characters fighting a giant, like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I made 7 or 8 images of that, put them on my Flash website, dragonskull.com. And September rolled around, and I started sending my portfolio everywhere. But the thing is, this was 2003, so we're talking about D&D, Dungeons and Dragons 3rd edition, which had the D20 OGL, Open Gaming License. And the Open Gaming License, I don't know if it happened before 3rd edition, D20, it kind of boomed at that moment. So suddenly, everybody was making role-playing game books. Like, suddenly anybody could make role-playing books using the D20 license. I knew nothing about this. Like, I just entered at that time.
You were like, I like the art.
Yeah.
So I'm just like searching on the internet for companies making role-playing games.
And mind you, beginnings practically of the internet. Like, when did Google come out? Because I don't even...
Google? I think Google was already a thing.
Okay.
But it was but people, my searches at that time were Alta Vista. That was the search engine I would use, Alta Vista. Yeah. And Yahoo and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yahoo.
So eventually, it took me 4 months. My mother was not happy. Because it did not take me until September. It took me until November. Of 2003. And I finally got a reply from what I, at the moment, thought was like, oh, it's a role-playing game company in Texas. It was just like a group of players that wanted to publish like their own adventure supplement.
That's awesome.
And they were willing to pay an artist to do the illustrations for them. It was called 12 to Midnight. That was the name of the company. It was a company in Texas. And they hired me to make the illustrations for what was a horror role-playing game, but it was like a redneck horror role-playing game.
Okay.
Okay.
So I made illustrations for a couple of their books, and they put me in contact with their friends, which were actually just gamers, right? Gamers. And they were a group of gamers. I love them to death. They are, I'm still friends with them. Nicest people you'll ever meet. They're actually, nowadays, they're known as Dim and Wit, the Fairy Brothers. They're a couple of guys in Texas that go to conventions and Renaissance fairs and stuff like that, dressed up as Dim and Wit, the Fairy Brothers. They're like, you can look them up.
Yeah,
they're online.
They're awesome.
They had a role playing group that they called Alden Minor, which was like the name of the place where the group resided in the game. They just wanted illustrations of all their characters and stuff. Like, they really, really take their gaming very seriously. They would like hire me to make illustrations of their game. And I continued working like that with like commissions with them, and I continued.
Did it pay well?
No, but I mean, I don't want it to seem like maybe they didn't pay me well.
Yeah, no, for just what it was. I mean,
I couldn't charge very much. No, actually, that plays into the whole thing, because like I couldn't charge very much. I was very much novice, and stuff like that. But I started getting more and more jobs. Not enough to like sustain myself, but I started getting more and more jobs.
Wait, but 2004, I do have a question about the payment part, because you don't have to say how
Okay.
much, but I want to ask, how did you get paid as a artist from Colombia getting clients from the US? Because back then there was like not a system that you
Yeah.
could get paid. So can you explain a little
Yeah.
bit?
It's just okay. PayPal was old, but I
Okay.
couldn't use I actually even think PayPal existed. I'm not sure, but I had to use a payment system that was called iCobo.
Okay.
There's actually like systems similar to that. Basically, it was a system that allowed them to pay you with a credit card, and then you would use a card that iCobo would send you,
Oh.
and you could
Okay.
take and you could
Like a
get that
cash
on
card. Yeah.
yeah, like you could get that
Huh.
on an ATM. So
Interesting.
I had
Okay.
them send me the card, and that was how I got my first. And when I finally got my hands on PayPal, what I had to do was I had to use an address in the U.S. because my sister lives in the U.S. So I registered in PayPal with my sister's address, and basically I would get the money here by transferring it to a bank account that belonged to my sister.
Ugh.
And I had a card for that bank account that I could get the money from an ATM here.
So every time it expired,
Eventually-
you had to.
It's like money laundering over there. Oh, is that legal? No, I'm just kidding. I honestly don't know.
I'm pretty sure it's not 100% legal. Eventually, PayPal.
That's what you have to do. Like,
Yeah.
Eventually, PayPal does work in in Colombia, but that's like a
Yeah.
few years ago. Like
no,
that
I
was the
know.
way I
But
did
now it
everything
like
up
auto
until-
transfers like the money, even like it converts it and everything. Because we had an
Like
intern
it's
a
much
long time
simpler
ago
now.
for Australia. And I punched in how much it was in US dollars and out it went in Australian.
Yeah. And
So-
actually, I couldn't
so
get
I-
paid up until 2020, actually, because I not to get into the story, but the first time I wanted to get paid through PayPal, Colombia didn't have a system. So
Mhm.
that's I'll talk about
It
it.
was
later.
pretty complicated. It was very,
Yeah.
very complicated, very, very risky, but hey.
Yeah.
So in 2004, I was I added something to what I did. You know, I was doing like these commissions. And I added a webcomic to the mix because I had discovered
It was
webcomics
fun.
the year before.
Yeah.
I discovered webcomics the year before, and I was thinking, well, you know, this life of working as a commission artist, it's like I could make a comic out of my life. So I made my comic that was called Commissioned. So in 2005, I was working commissions and commissioned the webcomic, but I still wasn't making enough money to make a living. And my mother was starting to get worried. Like she wanted me to get what she considered to be a real job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I was absolutely not getting in her eyes. So what happened then was that she tried playing on the whole idea that my entire life I had basically been the kind of kid that was like, I can't wait to live on my own. So she started making comments, like the occasional comment about like, oh, like he's never gonna leave the house, like he's never. Oh, she made that.
Because you
comment.
you still lived at home during this time,
Yeah,
right? Like,
yeah.
yeah.
I still live with my parents. So she started making comments like, yeah, he's never gonna leave the house. He's never gonna go out on his own and stuff like that. And at that time, I got a call from the university. Like, hey, you want to teach a class here? Not illustration at that time. At that time, it was editorial design. They just needed a teacher.
Yeah.
And like I said, I'm good at graphic design. So I was like, yeah, I'll take that class. I mean, it's not like a full-time thing. It was just a few hours a week. I took that class, and with what I was making from commissions and what I was making at the university, it basically went like, I'm leaving. I'm leaving. I'm going solo. And at that moment, my mother was like every single mother, I assume. She's like, but nobody was kicking you out.
You don't
late, I'm
have
leaving.
to leave.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Be my
So I
baby
did.
forever.
Yeah.
And oh man, like my first apartment was just a hole. It was it was an apartment without any windows.
Oh no.
Oh, well.
And it had fleas. It had fleas.
Oh,
My
no.
first
Without any
apartment had
windows,
fleas
it
too. Yep.
Awesome.
That's not. I thought it was the cats. I thought it was because the first thing I did as soon as I moved out of my
No, they
parents'
live in the
apartment
carpet.
was
Ugh.
get cats. Like the
Yeah.
first thing I did
Yeah.
was get cats because I was
In
never
the
allowed to have
woods,
cats. So the
they
first
live
thing I
in-
did was get cats.
Dirt.
Yeah.
The cats were like had fleas, and I tried doing everything to get rid of the cats' fleas, and I just couldn't. And when I moved out of that apartment, like 3 years later, cats suddenly like
No more
had no
fleas.
fleas,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, oh, they're in the apartment.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I did that, or like I just continued doing that, like until in 2009, the webcomic became my full-time job. Yeah, the
Wow.
webcomic was my business in 2009. I kept on teaching at the university, and I still do, as an adjunct professor. So, a few hours a week and stuff like that. But in 2009, the webcomic became my full-time job. I started a company with a guy in the US. The company was called Scallywags. We were doing Kickstarter campaigns and all that kind of stuff, and it was all going very well. And I did that until 2014. In 2014, because of things I'm not going to go into, the company collapsed and everything was done. And I stopped doing the webcomic. I mean, I continued doing it kind of into 2016, but not as full-time or anything like that. And in 2014, I went back to commissions. And I did commissions like full-time until 2016, which was when I discovered Twitch, which is how I met you, Sabrina.
Mm-hmm.
So I started Twitch in 2016 and did that. I got partnered and did Twitch and commissions until 2018.
Yeah.
And in 2018, the reason I'm skipping all over this is because I want to get to my current job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that time was, for the most part, stable. Like, it didn't change. We're working at the things that you were working at. Yeah.
Yeah.
In 2018, but I suppose the way I got my job in 2018 in the video game industry would be relevant to what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I got my job in video games in 2018. We can talk more about that later.
Yeah, we'll deep
And I
dive
worked
into
in
all
video
sorts
games.
of stories.
Yeah. Worked in video games until 2020. And that's when I said, I want to work. Like, no. I don't want video games. I like playing them. But what I want to do is role-playing game art. That's what I've been wanting to do for like since
20 years.
2003.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in 2020, I started. I got my first freelance job as an RPG artist,
Awesome.
and that's what I've been working on ever since. And that's where I will. I mean, for now, who knows what will happen like, but for now, I will be an RPG artist, and I am very happy at that job. That is my current
Good.
job.
And then you started a podcast, and that podcast became an awesome thing, Ian. Your new job.
Hey, I am totally cool with just living off the podcast
Hell yeah.
and being much more selective about which games I illustrate.
Yeah.
What's that job you got there? Dungeons and Dragons? Never heard of it. No. Don't need that. No. Yeah. So yeah. And no, I mean, I did podcasting in 2005, the Extra Life Radio
Right.
podcast.
How did that start?
And that, I was doing webcomics, and Extra Life was a webcomic that I followed by Scott Johnson. Nice guy. And he posted on his webcomic that he was going to start a podcast, so that he was looking for people to do the podcast with him. And I said, why not? Because he okay, so we're talking about 2005. 2005 is the beginning of YouTube, actually.
Yeah.
But YouTube didn't belong to Google back then.
Mm-mm.
It happened later.
Yeah.
No Facebook either at that time. So what you would do is you would do website rings. I don't know if you guys know what that is, a website ring.
No.
So
No, actually.
okay. So website rings, what they were was that you got in touch with other people that had websites similar to yours. And what you would do is you would have a banner, like all websites had banners, and you would have a banner on your website that would rotate different links. So basically what you did is, like, let's say all three of us have a website, like each one has a webcomic. So on my website, there would be a banner that would rotate links to each of your comics.
Okay.
So and
It was
and
like
every single
advertising,
website,
kind of.
Yeah.
every single website had a link section. So you would do link exchanges.
Mm.
Like you would see on the side of my website little banners for all the webcomics that were like my friends.
Okay.
So so Extra Life liked one of my comics one day and like posted it on his blog section of his website, and that kind of got me my first few like readers. So the guy knew me.
Mhm.
And so I like had him in my links and my banners, and he had me in his link and his banners. And when he posted like, "Hey, I want to do a podcast. Who wants to be a part of it?" I didn't even know what a podcast was, but I'm like, I want to be
Me.
I want to be a part of it. So I sent in, and he chose me. As funny as it
Awesome.
sounds, he chose me, and Brian Dunaway, who was also a webcomic artist back then, and Andrew Koniecki at that time.
Yeah.
Eventually, Andrew left the podcast, and it was Scott, Brian, and myself doing Extra Life Radio podcast until 2010, when it ended. So it was 5 years of podcasting. Yeah, 5
Awesome.
years of
Long time.
podcasting that I did with Extra Life.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Here's
it
to
was good
5
times.
years ShrimpBackPodcast.
It was good times. I missed them, but hey, I'm here podcasting again, so yeah. But it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. The Extra Life Radio podcast, and Scott Johnson was like, at the time he became like a titan of podcasting. He is. Scott Johnson is not dead, and he's still doing his thing. But Scott Johnson has been like a pioneer of podcasting, along with a lot of other people. But he definitely pushed the whole medium forward a lot.
Interesting. Good have known that.
It's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, he started his company called Frog Pants Studios. It's
Great name.
exists. He still
Yeah.
he still does it. He's still got a lot of stuff going on. And it was all built around Extra Life and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And, he's still at it. He's very, very. He's been a pioneer of the whole medium.
Nice.
So yeah, thanks, Scott.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so that and yeah, that's I suppose I mean, there would be the whole story of how I got like the different jobs that I got, but I suppose that's a story for another time.
Hmm.
Yeah. We
We
can.
didn't really talk about how you got into the job now. Like we talked about kind of our first commissions for the
Oh,
most
right.
part, but you never got to how you actually got your job,
Right.
more or less. Like what brought you to being a stable artist?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I guess I can. Yeah. I did skip all of that. Okay. So I'm trying to think because after. Okay, I did my company, the video game company.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
after that ended, we all decided to do something else, something different. So I was still like, yeah, I want to be an artist. I want to be an illustrator. Ola had shown me how to get kind of commissions with the commissionathlon. I'll talk about it later, but I kind of knew how to get commissions, but I wasn't getting like regular commissions. It was like very sporadic. Like every 2 months, someone would be like, "Hey, can you draw my boyfriend as I don't know, whatever."
Mhm.
But then I started making 2 portfolios. One for illustration, which was illustrations that I had been making for myself and stuff. And the
Mhm.
second portfolio was for graphic design, because at the company I had to do some graphic design related jobs, and we had been hired for like several companies to do like promotional videos and stuff, and I kind of knew how to work on the graphic design part. I did get a lot better after university because I had to practice a lot more with actual clients, and I did get kind of good at working on Illustrator, designing logos, like all the graphic design things that actually paid us more at the company than the video games that we tried making.
Yeah.
So I made 2 portfolios. I remember just making the graphic design one. Very, I don't know how to describe the feeling, but it was like, I don't want to do this. I hate graphic design, but it's what's keeping my bills paid. So I did it. I made that. And the first actual job that I got as a graphic designer paid me almost nothing. And I have to explain why. Apparently, like a very nice friend of mine told me, like, hey, there's this person that needs a website, like a landing page of their product, and they need the illustrations for it. And when she said illustrations, I was like, oh, that sounds very nice, because it's like, yeah, illustrations. But it was like those corporate vectorized illustrations that
Yeah.
you see, yeah, like the Canva illustrations, let's say. And I was like, okay, I have been working on like projects like that at the company, but it's still illustrations. It's not logos or whatever. So I was like, okay. When I asked how much they would pay me, I didn't know how to charge, because I didn't really know how to charge design. And the whole charging for work was like that at the company that I worked at, somebody else did it. So I didn't know how to charge for personal work. So I told them like, hey, I didn't tell them, but I thought like, hey, I can make this in about a week. So I kind of
Yeah.
worked around it.
Your
Yeah.
hours, basically, how much
My-
you'd work into it.
Yeah. And then I said something, I'm trying to remember it, but it was like very low. It was like no more than $20. It was like insane for like a week's work. And
No.
then, oh man, I'm so ashamed of this, but this is like experience. This is how you,
Hey, no.
yeah,
Yeah. This is how we learn.
yeah. I told another graphic designer that I knew about it, and they were like, hey, I was offered the same, and I know another person was offered the same job, and they charged around, and I'm not going to say how much, but it was like 900% more than what I was charging. Yeah. And of course, like the guy that hired me was like, hell yeah, I'm going to hire you for what? Almost
Mhm.
nothing? Okay, let's do this. And it wasn't a week. It was a whole month of work.
Oh,
And
no.
I already had said, yeah, I'll do it. So it was a month that I got $20, basically. It was, oh man.
Oh.
Yeah.
All in the $20 month.
Yeah, basically. And at the time, I do have to say that my parents are very helpful. They have been very accommodating to just being those supportive parents that are like, hey, don't worry, you're getting out of like a bad thing, the company going under and whatever. So we will support you. And I am thankful for that, because I don't know how I could have, I don't know, survived that month without their
Yeah.
help.
Oh, yeah. Parent.
Yeah.
I remember there was a time Dan and I were living in Virginia at the time, and I was so broke. Like it was enough to pay my bills, just enough to
Yeah.
pay my bills. And this was me working that day job with the jersey company.
Yeah.
I couldn't afford a turkey for our Thanksgiving. It's $25. I called my mom and I said, "Mom,
That's more
pay
than
you
Mall
back."
makes in a month.
Yeah.
Right? But I couldn't afford it. And I said, "Mom, can I have $25 just so that Dan and I can have our holiday like dinner thing? I wanted it to be special." Nothing.
Yeah.
And my mom said, "Sure." She wired me through the internet, $25, and get up to the counter. The guy's checking out all of our little grocery things, and I'm like, "Oh, the turkey didn't get rung up." And he was like, "Forget about it." I was like, "Then we get the turkey for free anyway."
Oh.
But still, that's how like at a low point I was with trying to make artwork and not being able to, is that I had to ask my mom for $25 to get the turkey. Like, that's how little extra funds I had.
Yeah. That's cute.
Wasn't a good
Oh
time.
wow.
Yeah.
The low point, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically.
But I mean, the
my
whole point of that,
point.
was to say, like, supportive family still. My mom wasn't sitting there saying, like, "Oh, you should look into another job. Clearly this isn't working." She was like, "Of course, honey, I'll send you your 25."
I didn't really share my low point with my parents because, I didn't want to deal with that. My low point was in 2014 after a webcomic company failed.
Mm-hmm.
And after you met me. We met in 2014, so this all relates together. Yeah.
It might even be at the time I was your teacher, actually.
Oh, okay.
Because so things were going very well before that. I had hired an intern. She's one of my best friends now. I love her to death.
Yeah.
But so, she would go every day to my house. I had an extra computer for her in like the office area of my house and stuff like that. But then the whole company collapsed. And I had a commitment with an intern for a semester that had just started the week before.
Oh.
And I had a contract, and I couldn't break that contract. I would get into trouble. So I had not just no idea where I was going to get money for myself. I had to pay the salary of this person for a semester. So I was ready to take any job that I could get. And so I got a call from a company that was like, "Hey, we're going to make a commercial for a bank. And we want you to do the concept, the storyboard. But we need it for tomorrow."
Oh, no.
And it was noon. And I'm like, nope, I need this money. You know what? Send it. What's one day of not sleeping if it's going to help me get through the month? So send it. They're like, no, you have to come. You have to come for a meeting. I'm like, okay, I'll go for the meeting. So I had an electric bicycle back then. So I'm like, okay, I'll be there in a little bit. I go to grab my electric bicycle. It's been charging, but it's not charged. That's weird. And the intern, she's there in the office, basically doing nothing because I had nothing to give her to do. Like, there was no work, there was no money, and so I'm like, okay, hey, intern, I'll be back in a little bit. I'm gonna go to a meeting. Might have a job. Okay, so a bicycle. I go out. I take a bus. I go all the way to the meeting. The meeting was one of those meetings like this could have been an email, but okay.
Yeah.
So, now again, we're talking 2014. People don't realize smartphones. Like, I mean, they were a thing in 2014, but most of us had like just regular, not smart cell phones in 2014.
Yeah.
So, when you go into a meeting, you turn off your phone. So I go into the meeting, I turn off my phone, and they tell me, like, the meeting is like, we need 30 images for tomorrow. And I'm just sitting there like, yes,
Okay.
I can do this. Yeah. But by the way, kids, no, this is not okay.
Yeah, don't do that.
Yeah, don't do this. But I did. So okay, I'm out of the meeting. It's 2 p.m. and I'm like, okay, I'm not sleeping today, but I can do 30 images from one day to the next. And so I'm walking down from where I was in the meeting, okay, and I turn on my cell phone. There's like, a bunch of missed calls from the intern. And I'm like, okay, and a bunch of messages. Okay. So I open the messages, and the first message I see is like, hey, where's the fire extinguisher?
Oh no.
No.
Oh no.
Oh my God. So the next message is like, the house is on fire, but don't worry about it. So the last message is like, I took care of the fire. Don't worry about it. We'll talk when you get home. So I'm like, okay. I rush home. I get home. I used to live, that apartment was a first floor. And so when I go around the corner and I see my apartment, like the area around the apartment outside is all white, like it snowed. And so I go into the building, I open the door, and everything is white, is covered in a white powder. And the intern is just there, and I'm like, hey, what happened? She's like, the bike exploded. The bike exploded. Like, okay, that's a thing. And she's like, yeah, so the bike exploded, so the patio caught on fire. But fortunately, I found the fire extinguisher, and I put out the fire. Like, okay, do you empty the entire fire extinguisher? He's like, yeah, you're supposed to do that, right?
No.
Oh, but I mean, thank you. Thank you for saving my home.
Yeah.
The cats are nowhere to be seen.
No, of course not.
So I'm like, okay, I have to clean this up so I can get to work, so I can produce these images. It's like 3:00 at the time, or 4. And so I go to the kitchen to get like the mop and the broom and all that. And I go to open the water, the faucet, and like a whole chunk of the wall just like, bam, falls out. The tube breaks and the apartment starts flooding.
Oh no. Oh no.
Like, okay. So I have to run out the building to like the main water line and close it from there. And so I do that. I'm like, okay, what do I do now? So I go to the building administration. I'm like, hey, I had this situation go on. Like, okay, we have to call a plumber. So the plumber shows up like around 6, fixes that. At that time, it's like the intern's day is over. So I'm like, yeah, just go home. Thank you for saving my apartment. The plumber fixes that. I think I can't not clean the apartment because I don't know, that powder can't be good for the cats.
Yeah.
Cats are eventually going to come out of wherever they're hiding.
Mm-hmm.
They can't just leave the entire apartment covered in extinguisher powder.
Yeah.
So around 6, I can finally start cleaning up the apartment. I'm finished with that like around 8. And from there, I finally managed to start working on the 30 images that I have to deliver by 8 a.m. the next day. And I manage it. I manage it by 6 a.m. At 6 a.m., I finish the 30 images.
Yeah.
And I send them. And remember, I sent them, and actually the intern arrived to like her day of work. I just like opened the door, and I'm like, I haven't slept. I'm just gonna go crash. So I let her in, and I just go crash in my bedroom. And like noon comes, I wake up. The client hasn't said anything. Okay. I just leave it. The next day, noon rolls around. The client hasn't said anything. I'm like, oh, sorry, right. Like, hey, what's going on? Like, are the images okay? Did you receive everything all right? Oh, all right. Yeah, we haven't checked that.
No. Oh my god. Oh no. Oh,
And that was my low point. That was when I went like, no, something's got to change. Something's got to
Yeah.
change here.
So-
Like, I have to change something because this is not, no, I can't live
Yeah.
like this. They actually never paid me either.
Oh no.
Oh wow.
Come at them. Come at
Yeah.
them now.
I
Yeah.
said, no, the company doesn't exist because I actually
Right.
sent them the invoice, and the next week they sent me their notification, like, or whatever, of bankruptcy.
Was-
Oh no.
So I never even got paid for
Oh.
that job. But that, I think that, like, standing in my flooded, extinguisher powder covered, burnt
Burnt.
apartment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then no, I think the low, like, it was when they told me, like, oh, we haven't checked it, we forgot. Like,
Yeah.
I think that was like when I was like, okay, this is the low point. This is
Yeah.
this is the bottom. Okay, cool. Like,
Yeah.
there you go.
That's
Okay.
you
Cool,
win.
that-
You win.
yeah,
That's
that-
the lowest anyone can get, I guess.
I don't know, man. I probably did spend more than $20 that month, though.
True. So
I
our
did
stores
probably
combined
spend more than-
are the lowest of the low. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I
Yeah.
probably did spend more than $20 that month.
Yeah.
I think we all, but I think it's good. I think it's good that we all had
Yeah.
that low point that made
Well,
us go,
it's easy to talk about, very quickly how we got our careers in these like steps. But what's hard to capture is those in-between moments where we weren't making it. It sounds
Yeah.
like we're making it. I mean, mine is definitely more of a, like, I'm not getting work. It was still, discipline. That's
Yeah.
what it comes down to, is like, even through those low, it's like, well, guess I'm not doing it anymore.
Yeah.
I remember something I heard recently, and this is gonna be like super wishy-washy, super motivational, but it was you don't fail until you quit.
Mm.
Like, until you quit, every time you fail is just like, no, I just haven't done it yet.
Yeah.
I
haven't
think Bob
accomplished-
Ross
yeah.
said that exact thing.
Awesome.
Oh, I wouldn't be surprised. I actually
Yeah.
don't know where it came from. Like, I can't I can't quote it in terms of tell you who said it, but it was like, yeah, until you quit, it's just you haven't done it yet. Like, it
Yeah.
only becomes a failure if you quit.
Right.
So I'm glad none of us quit.
Me too.
I wouldn't go as far as saying that I'm like, hey, Mom, I did it. I'm at the top. Like,
I am.
no.
No, Mom, I did it.
Yeah, like, no, I wouldn't go as far as saying that I've accomplished all my goals.
No. Will we ever?
I like to think I've definitely come quite a distance from burnt,
Where it starts.
flooded, powdered apartment.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like to think we've come quite a distance from there.
Yeah.
But I
'Cause
suppose
we can think maybe in a later episode or something, we can talk about our highest points in our art careers, which can also be interesting to talk about. I guess.
yes. Well,
Hmm.
I suppose that we shall continue this topic with
next
topics.
episode.
We shall continue this topic with topics such as
No.
how we handled our portfolio. How did we contact our clients? How did we promote ourselves? Our experiences working with companies and then working freelance and stuff like that. And we shall do that next episode. So those of you listening, this topic will be continued next episode.